I have been living in this house for 9 months now, and I want you to know something before I tell you my story. If you find a house that is too cheap, too perfect, too isolated, and the previous owner left behind a handwritten note with rules, do not ignore it. Do not laugh it off. Do not think you are smarter than the person who survived there before you. Because I made that mistake, and now I am trapped here, following rules I do not fully understand, waiting for the day I slip up and pay the price. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Comment below and tell me this. If you found a note in your new home that said, "Never turn off the hallway light between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., would you follow it? Or would you ignore it like I almost did? And hit that subscribe button, because by the end of this story you are going to want to hear every single rule I learned the hard way. Trust me, your life might depend on it someday. My name is Scott, and I am 29 years old. 29 years of what I thought was a normal life, working a normal job, living in a normal apartment in Portland, Oregon. But normal does not pay the bills when your marketing firm downsizes, and you are suddenly jobless with rent due in 2 weeks. That is how I ended up scrolling through real estate listings at 2 in the morning, desperate for anything I could afford. The house appeared on my screen like a gift from heaven. A 2-story Victorian in Milford, Washington, a small town about 3 hours north of Portland. The price was so low I thought it was a typo. I called the real estate agent the next morning, and she seemed surprised anyone was interested. "It has been on the market for 8 months, she said, her voice crackling through my phone speaker. "The previous owner passed away and the family just wants it gone. They are very motivated to sell." I did not ask why it had been sitting empty for so long. I did not ask why the family was so eager to get rid of it. I just saw those numbers, did the math in my head, and realized I could actually afford to own a house, a whole house. After years of cramped apartments and noisy neighbors, I could have space, silence, and something that belonged to me. The drive to Milford took longer than I expected. The town sat tucked between dense forests and rolling hills, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and strangers stand out. Main Street had maybe 10 buildings total. A general store, a diner, a post office, and a few other shops that looked like they had been there since the 1950s. The house stood at the end of Birch Lane, separated from the nearest neighbor by at least half a mile of trees. The real estate agent, a woman named Patricia with graying hair and a tired smile, was waiting for me in the driveway when I pulled up. "You must be Scott," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm but cold, like she had been standing outside too long. I looked up at the house. It was beautiful in that old, forgotten way, white paint peeling in strips revealing gray wood underneath. The windows were tall and narrow, some with cracked panes. A wraparound porch sagged slightly on one side, but the structure looked solid enough. Victorian style, probably built in the early 1900s, 2 stories with a steep roof and a stone chimney rising from the center. "It needs work," Patricia admitted, following my gaze. "But the bones are good. The previous owner, Evelyn Marsh, lived here for 43 years. She passed away 6 months ago in a nursing home. Natural causes. The family has already cleared out most of her personal items, but they left the furniture. Said you could keep whatever you want." We walked through the house together, and I tried to see past the dust and the cobwebs. The living room had hardwood floors that creaked under our feet. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, blackened from years of use. The kitchen was small and outdated, but functional. Upstairs, there were 3 bedrooms and a bathroom with an old clawfoot tub. "There is also an attic," Patricia said, pointing to a narrow door at the end of the upstairs hallway. "Access is through that door and up a pull-down ladder. Evelyn used it for storage, I think." I nodded, making mental notes of everything I would need to fix or replace. It was a lot of work, but nothing I could not handle with time and effort. The basement was the last stop on the tour. Stone walls, concrete floor, a furnace in one corner, and a water heater in another. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting weak yellow light across the space. It smelled like damp earth and old metal. "Everything is in working order," Patricia assured me. "The inspection report is clean. No major issues. Just normal wear and tear for a house this age." I signed the papers 3 days later. The family accepted my offer without negotiation, which should have been my first warning sign, but I was too excited about finally owning property to question their eagerness. Moving day was exhausting. I did not have much. A bed, a couch, a desk, some boxes of clothes and books. Everything fit into a small moving truck I rented for the day. By late afternoon, I had unloaded everything and returned the truck to the rental place in town. The sun was setting when I got back to the house. Orange light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the driveway. I stood there for a moment, just looking at the place. My place. It felt surreal. Inside, I spent the next few hours unpacking. Clothes went into the bedroom closet. Books filled the empty shelves in the living room. I set up my desk in the second bedroom, planning to use it as a home office while I searched for new work. The kitchen was mostly stocked already. Evelyn had left behind dishes, pots, pans, utensils. Everything was old but clean. I opened the drawers one by one, checking what was there. Silverware, cooking tools, random items like twist ties and rubber bands. The fourth drawer I opened stuck halfway. I pulled harder and it finally slid out with a scraping sound. Inside was mostly empty except for some old receipts, a few batteries, and a folded piece of paper tucked in the back corner. I pulled out the paper and unfolded it. The paper was thick, slightly yellowed with age. At the top, written in neat, careful handwriting, were 2 words, house rules below, that 5 numbered items in the same precise script. Rule 1, never let the hallway light go dark between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Rule 2, never go into the attic if you hear footsteps above you. Rule 3, keep all mirrors covered after sunset. Rule 4, do not follow any shadow that moves on its own. Rule 5, if you smell smoke but see no fire, leave through the back door immediately and do not return until daylight. I read through the list twice, then let out a short laugh. What kind of rules were these? They sounded like something from a horror movie, not instructions for living in a house. The hallway light made some sense, I supposed. Old houses could be dark and easy to trip in. Keeping a light on was just practical safety advice. But the rest of it? Do not go into the attic if you hear footsteps. Do not follow shadows that move on their own. Cover mirrors after sunset. It was obvious what had happened. Evelyn Marsh had been old when she died. Her family mentioned she had been in a nursing home. She probably had dementia or some other condition that made her confused and paranoid. These rules were the product of a failing mind, seeing threats that did not exist. I almost threw the paper away, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the care she had taken in writing it down. The handwriting was so neat, so deliberate. Each letter perfectly formed. She had taken time with this. It had mattered to her. I folded the paper back along its original creases and tucked it into the drawer with the other random items. Out of sight, out of mind. I had real things to worry about. Finding a new job, fixing up the house, settling into a new town. I did not have time for ghost stories. That night, I fell asleep easily. The bed was comfortable, and I was exhausted from moving. The house settled around me with the normal sounds of old wood expanding and contracting. Nothing kept me awake. I woke up at 2:47 a.m. to complete darkness. Not normal darkness. This was thick, heavy, absolute. I could not see my hand in front of my face. I could not see the window where moonlight should have been coming through. I could not see anything at all. My phone was on the nightstand. I reached for it, fumbling in the dark. My fingers found the edge of the table, then the phone. I pressed the button to light up the screen. The phone was dead. Completely dead, even though I had plugged it in before going to sleep. The charger cord was still connected, but no power was flowing through it. I sat up in bed, my heart starting to pound. A power outage. That had to be it. Old house, old wiring. Something had tripped a breaker. Simple explanation. I swung my legs out of bed and stood up. The floor was cold under my bare feet. I needed to find a flashlight or candles, then go down to the basement and check the breaker box. Easy enough. I took a step toward where I thought the door was and immediately bumped into something hard. Pain shot through my shin. I reached out and felt the edge of my dresser. Wrong direction. I turned and tried again, moving slowly with my hands outstretched. My fingers found the wall, then the door frame. I pulled the door open and stepped into the hallway. The darkness here was even worse. No windows, no light at all. I kept one hand on the wall and moved slowly toward the stairs. My memory of the house layout was still fresh. Bedroom door, 3 steps to the left, then the staircase should be right there. I found the top of the stairs and started down 1 step at a time. My free hand gripped the railing hard enough to hurt. The old wood creaked under my weight. 13 steps total. I counted each one. At the bottom, I paused and tried to orient myself. The living room was to my right. The kitchen was straight ahead. The basement door was in the kitchen near the back entrance. I moved forward, shuffling my feet to avoid tripping on anything. My shin still throbbed where I had hit the dresser. The darkness pressed against me like something physical, something with weight. I made it to the kitchen and felt along the wall for the basement door. My fingers found the doorknob, turned it, pulled the door open. A rush of cold air came up from below, carrying the smell of damp concrete and rust. The breaker box was down there. I just needed to get down the stairs, find the box, flip whatever switch had tripped, and the lights would come back on. Simple. I found the railing and started down the basement stairs. These were steeper than the main staircase, narrower. I took my time testing each step before putting my full weight on it. Halfway down, I heard something. Footsteps, above me, in the attic. I froze on the stairs, one hand gripping the railing, the other pressed against the cold stone wall. I listened. The footsteps were slow and deliberate. Back and forth across the attic floor. Heavy footsteps like someone pacing. The old boards creaked with each step, a rhythmic sound that echoed through the dark house back and forth. Back and forth. I stood there in the dark basement stairwell, listening to someone walk around in my attic. But there was no one in my attic. There could not be. I was alone in the house. The footsteps stopped. I waited, holding my breath. Silence pressed in from all sides. Then the footsteps started again, faster this time, moving from one end of the attic to the other. Quick, urgent steps, like someone was searching for something. Rule number 2 came back to me. Never go into the attic if you hear footsteps above you. I did not go into the attic. I was in the basement stairwell. That was different. The rule said do not go into the attic, not do not be in the house when you hear footsteps. I was following the rule, technically. I continued down the stairs, moving faster now. I needed to get the power back on. Needed to see what was happening. The darkness and the footsteps were getting inside my head, making me imagine things. My foot hit the basement floor. I stepped forward into the open space, hands outstretched, searching for the breaker box. It should be on the far wall near the furnace. I took 3 steps forward and walked straight into someone standing in the dark. My hands hit fabric. A shirt, a jacket, something. I felt the solid shape of a human torso. I jerked back with a shout, stumbling, nearly falling. Who is there? My voice came out high and scared. Who is in my house? No answer. Above me, the footsteps in the attic continued. Back and forth, back and forth. I stood frozen in the dark basement, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Someone was down here with me. Someone had been standing silently in the dark while I walked right up to them. I am calling the police, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You need to leave right now. Still no answer. No movement. No sound except those footsteps above. I backed up toward the stairs, my hands behind me, feeling for the wall. My fingers found stone. I moved along it, keeping my eyes on the darkness where I had felt the person standing. My foot hit the bottom stair. I turned and ran up, taking the steps 2 at a time, not caring about the noise. I burst through the basement door into the kitchen and slammed it shut behind me, fumbling for a lock but finding none. The house was still completely dark. The footsteps in the attic had stopped. I stood in the kitchen, gasping for breath, my back pressed against the basement door. Someone had been down there. I had felt them, solid and real, standing in the dark. I needed to get out, needed to get to my truck and drive away and call the police from town. Let them come and search the house. This was breaking and entering. This was trespassing. I moved through the kitchen toward the front of the house, my hands outstretched. My fingers found the counter, then the wall. I followed it to the living room, then to the front door. My hand closed around the doorknob. I turned it, the door would not open. I yanked harder. The knob turned, but the door stayed shut, like something was holding it closed from the outside. I put my shoulder against it and pushed with all my weight. Nothing. The door would not budge. I ran to the living room window, found the latch, unlocked it. I tried to lift the window. It would not move. I tried the next window. Same result. Locked or stuck or held closed by something I could not see. Every window on the first floor was the same. None of them would open. I was trapped inside my own house in the dark, with someone or something else in here with me. That is when the lights came back on. All at once, every light in the house blazed to life. The sudden brightness was blinding after so much darkness. I squeezed my eyes shut, then slowly opened them, blinking away spots. I was standing in the living room. Everything looked normal. Furniture in place, my boxes still unpacked in the corner. Sunlight was streaming through the windows. Bright morning sunlight. Morning. I looked at my watch. 6:13 a.m. I had been in the dark for more than 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like 30 minutes. 3 hours of being trapped in my house with someone in the basement and footsteps in the attic and doors that would not open. I ran upstairs to my bedroom. My phone was on the nightstand, plugged in and charging, showing 87% battery. It had not been dead. The whole house had not been without power. Just the lights had gone out. Just the hallway light. Rule number 1. Never let the hallway light go dark between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. I walked to the upstairs hallway and looked at the light fixture on the ceiling. It was on now, casting normal light across the narrow space. But last night, between 2:47 a.m. and 6:13 a.m., it had been dark, and things had happened. I went back downstairs, moving slowly, checking every room. The basement door was closed. I opened it and turned on the light. Empty. Just the furnace and the water heater and the concrete floor. No sign that anyone had been down there, but I had felt someone. I had walked right into them. I closed the basement door and went to the kitchen drawer where I had put Evelyn's note. I pulled it out and unfolded it. I read through the list 3 times. These were not the ramblings of a confused old woman. These were survival instructions, and I had already broken the first rule. I spent that entire day making sure the hallway light would never go dark again. First, I checked the bulb. It was old but still worked. I replaced it anyway with a new LED bulb rated for 20,000 hours of use. Then I checked the light switch. It was a standard toggle switch, nothing special. I used electrical tape to lock it in the up position so it could not accidentally be flipped off. But that was not enough. What if the bulb burned out in the middle of the night? What if there was another power outage? I drove to the hardware store in town and bought backup supplies. Extra bulbs, 2 battery-powered LED lanterns, an extension cord long enough to reach from a bedroom outlet to the hallway, and a power strip with a surge protector. The man behind the counter, an older guy with gray stubble and oil-stained hands, watched me pile everything onto the counter. "Doing some electrical work?" he asked, scanning the items. "Just making sure I have light," I said. "The house is old. I want to be prepared." He nodded slowly, looking at me with an expression I could not quite read. "You are the one who bought the Marsh place, right?" "End of Birch Lane?" "Yes, how did you know?" "Small town. Word gets around." He bagged my purchases. Evelyn was a good woman. Kept to herself mostly, but always polite when she came in here. She used to buy light bulbs pretty regular. Always made sure she had extras on hand. I took the bags from him. Did she say why? No, but she bought them every month like clockwork. Must have had 100 bulbs in that house by the time she left. He handed me my receipt. "You take care of that place." Evelyn loved it, even if it gave her trouble sometimes. I wanted to ask what kind of trouble, but the way he said it, with that look in his eyes, made me think he would not tell me even if I asked. Back at the house, I set up my backup system. I placed 1 battery-powered lantern on the small table in the hallway, right under the ceiling light. The other lantern went in my bedroom close to the door. I plugged in the extension cord and ran it from my bedroom outlet to the hallway, connecting it to a small lamp I positioned on the floor. 3 sources of light for the hallway. The overhead fixture, the battery-powered lantern, and the lamp connected to my bedroom outlet. If one failed, the others would still work. It felt excessive. It felt paranoid. But I had spent 3 hours trapped in darkness with footsteps above me and someone standing in my basement. And I was not going to let that happen again. For the next week, nothing happened. The hallway light stayed on from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every night. I checked it obsessively, getting up at midnight and 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. to make sure it was still burning. It always was. During the day, I worked on the house. I patched holes in the walls, fixed the sagging porch railing, cleaned years of grime off the windows. The work kept me busy and gave me a sense of control. This was my house. I was taking care of it. I also started looking for work. Remote freelance jobs mostly, since there was not much in Milford itself. I sent out resumes and cover letters, trying not to think about how quickly my savings were draining. The attic door stayed closed. I walked past it every day, going between the bedrooms and the bathroom. Sometimes I stopped and listened, but I never heard footsteps again. The attic was silent. On the 8th night, I got careless. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth before bed. It was 9:53 p.m. The hallway light was on, casting its usual warm glow across the narrow space. I finished brushing and went back to my bedroom. At 10:17 p.m., I was in bed reading when I realized I had left my phone charger in the bathroom. I needed it. My phone was at 34% and I wanted it fully charged in case of an emergency. I got up and walked to my bedroom door. The hallway was dark, completely dark. My heart dropped into my stomach. The light had been on 17 minutes ago. How had it gone out so fast? I stood in my doorway looking into that absolute darkness, the same thick, heavy blackness from that first night. I could not see the bathroom door 5 feet away. I could not see anything. The battery-powered lantern. I had put one in the hallway. I just needed to walk a few steps and find it, turn it on, figure out what happened to the ceiling light. I took one step into the hallway. A shadow moved. Not my shadow. Something else. It slid along the wall to my right, darker than the surrounding darkness. Impossible to see clearly, but definitely there. A human-shaped silhouette, tall and thin, moving slowly toward the far end of the hallway. Rule number 4. Do not follow any shadow that moves on its own. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to go back into my bedroom, close the door, wait for sunrise. But my phone charger was in the bathroom, and the battery-powered lantern was somewhere in that dark hallway. I needed light. The shadow stopped moving. It stood at the end of the hallway near the attic door, just standing there waiting. I took a step backward into my bedroom. My hand found the lamp on my nightstand. I picked it up, unplugging it from the wall, and held it like a weapon. Stupid maybe, but it made me feel better. The shadow started moving again, but not away from me, toward me. It glided along the wall, smooth and silent. No footsteps, no sound at all. Just that dark shape getting closer. I stepped back into my bedroom and slammed the door. My hand shook as I locked it. The lock was old and flimsy, just a simple push-button mechanism. But it was something. I stood there with my back against the door, holding the lamp, listening. Nothing. No sound from the hallway. No footsteps, no creaking boards, nothing. I stayed there for what felt like hours. My phone showed 10:31 p.m. Only 14 minutes had passed since I left the bathroom. 14 minutes that felt like a lifetime. At 6:04 a.m., sunlight started filtering through my bedroom window. I unlocked the door and opened it slowly. The hallway was bright and normal. The ceiling light was on, burning steadily. The battery-powered lantern sat on its table exactly where I had put it. Everything looked completely ordinary. I walked to the bathroom and found my phone charger plugged into the wall outlet. I picked it up and went back to my bedroom. That morning, I covered every mirror in the house. Rule number 3. Keep all mirrors covered after sunset. There were 6 mirrors total. 1 in the bathroom, 1 on the medicine cabinet, 1 full-length mirror on the back of my bedroom door, 2 decorative mirrors in the living room, and 1 in the downstairs hallway near the front entrance. I used old sheets and blankets from the linen closet. I hung them over each mirror with thumbtacks, making sure no reflective surface was visible. It looked ridiculous, like I was preparing for a funeral or trying to hide from something. Maybe I was. The work took most of the morning. When I finished, I stood in the living room and looked at my handiwork. Every mirror completely covered. The white sheets gave the house a strange, ghostly appearance. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. While it brewed, I pulled out Evelyn's note again and studied the rules. 5 simple instructions. I had already broken the first one and paid for it. I had seen what happened when I ignored rule number 4. Now I was following rule number 3, even though nothing had happened yet to make me think it was necessary. But I was learning. Evelyn had lived here for 43 years. She had figured out how to survive whatever was in this house. The least I could do was trust her experience. That afternoon, I drove into town to buy groceries. The general store was small but well stocked with basics. I filled my cart with easy meals, canned goods, bread, milk. At the checkout, a woman about my age with curly red hair smiled at me. Her name tag said Jennifer. "You are new in town," she said, scanning my items. It was a statement, not a question. "Yes, I moved here about 2 weeks ago. Bought the house on Birch Lane." Her smile faded slightly. "The Marsh house?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, focusing on scanning my groceries. Then she said, "My grandmother knew Evelyn. They were friends for years. She used to visit that house all the time when she was younger." "Really? What was Evelyn like?" Jennifer bagged my groceries slowly, like she was thinking carefully about her words. "She was kind. A little strange, maybe. She had a lot of rules about her house, about how things should be done. My grandmother said she was very particular about keeping lights on at certain times, and she always covered her mirrors at night." My hands went cold. "Why did she do that?" "I do not know. My grandmother never asked. She figured Evelyn had her reasons." Jennifer handed me my bags. "But I will tell you what my grandmother told me. She said Evelyn was the smartest woman she ever knew. Whatever Evelyn did, there was always a good reason for it, even if it did not make sense to other people." I drove back to the house thinking about that. Evelyn had not been confused or paranoid. She had been smart. She had learned how to live with whatever was in that house, and she had written down her knowledge for the next person who would need it for me. That night, I followed all the rules perfectly. Hallway light on at 10 p.m., mirrors covered. I stayed in my bedroom and did not go into the hallway after dark. I did not look for shadows or listen for footsteps. Nothing happened. The next night was the same, and the night after that. 5 nights passed without incident. The house stayed quiet and normal. I started to relax a little, to think that maybe I had figured it out. Maybe following the rules was enough. On the 6th night, I smelled smoke. It was 1:38 a.m. I was in bed, almost asleep, when the smell hit me. Strong and acrid, wood smoke mixed with something chemical like burning plastic. I sat up, instantly awake, my heart pounding fire. There was a fire in the house. I jumped out of bed and ran to the door. No smoke in the hallway. I checked the other bedrooms. Nothing. The smell was getting stronger, but I could not see any smoke or flames anywhere. I ran downstairs. The living room was clear. The kitchen was clear. No smoke, no fire, nothing burning. But the smell was overwhelming now. My eyes were watering from it. I coughed, covering my mouth with my shirt. Rule number 5. If you smell smoke but see no fire, leave through the back door immediately and do not return until daylight. The back door was in the kitchen. I ran to it, unlocked the deadbolt, and yanked it open. Cold night air rushed in, clean and fresh with no trace of smoke. I stumbled outside onto the small back porch and gasped for breath. Behind me, through the open door, I could still smell the smoke, thick and choking. But out here, the air was perfectly clear. I stood on the back porch in my pajamas and bare feet, shivering in the cold. The moon was nearly full, casting pale light across the overgrown backyard. Trees surrounded the property on 3 sides, their branches moving slightly in the night breeze. I turned and looked back into the house through the open door. I could see the kitchen clearly. No smoke visible, no flames. Just the normal interior of my house, lit by the hallway light that filtered down from upstairs. But the smell was still there. I could smell it from where I stood outside. I pulled the back door closed and sat down on the porch steps. My watch showed 1:42 a.m., 4 hours and 18 minutes until sunrise. I was supposed to wait until daylight before going back inside. 4 hours in the cold. 4 hours sitting outside my own house because of a smell. This was insane. I should go back inside, find the source of the smoke, make sure nothing was actually on fire. That was the rational thing to do. That was what any normal person would do. But I thought about the footsteps in the attic, the shadow in the hallway, the person standing in my basement in the dark. This house was not normal. And Evelyn's rules had kept me safe so far. I sat on those steps for 4 hours and 17 minutes. It was the longest night of my life. The cold seeped into my bones. My feet went numb. I dozed off a few times and woke up shivering, but I did not go back inside. At 6 a.m. exactly, the sky started to lighten, gray dawn spreading across the horizon. I stood up stiffly and walked to the back door. The smell was gone. I opened the door and stepped inside. The air was normal, clean, no trace of smoke or burning. I checked every room, every closet, the attic access door, the basement. Everything was fine. Nothing had been on fire. Nothing had been burning, but I had smelled it. Thick and choking, strong enough to make my eyes water. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, too exhausted to think clearly. Evelyn's note was in the drawer next to me. I did not need to take it out. I had the rules memorized now. 5 rules that made no sense but worked perfectly. 5 rules that had kept me alive for 3 weeks in a house where impossible things happened every night. Before I continue, I want to take a moment to say something. If this story is giving you chills, if you are sitting there wondering what you would do in my place, do me a favor. Share this video with someone. Post it in a comment section somewhere. Let other people know about this. Because the more people who hear this story, the more people who might understand what I went through, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there has experienced something similar and can tell me I'm not losing my mind. I called Patricia, the real estate agent, the next day. "Scott, how are you settling in?" Her voice was cheerful, but I heard something underneath it. Wariness, maybe. "I have some questions about the house," I said. "About Evelyn Marsh." Silence on the other end. "Then what kind of questions? Did she ever mention anything unusual about the property? Anything about the house having problems or needing special maintenance?" More silence. I heard papers shuffling in the background. "Evelyn was very particular about certain things," Patricia finally said. "She had routines she followed very strictly. But she never mentioned anything unusual to me. Is everything all right with the house? Any structural issues I should know about?" "No, everything is fine structurally. I just found some notes she left behind. Instructions for taking care of the place. I wanted to know if there was any history I should be aware of." "What kind of instructions?" I told her about the rules. All 5 of them. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Scott, I have been selling houses for 27 years. I have seen a lot of things. Some houses have histories. Some places hold on to things. Evelyn lived in that house for over 4 decades. If she left you instructions, I would follow them. That is all I can tell you. So you know something. I know that Evelyn was sharp as a tack until the day she went into the nursing home. I know that she loved that house despite everything. And I know that she wanted it to go to someone who would take care of it properly. That is why the family priced it so low. They wanted it sold to someone who would actually live there, not to someone who would flip it or tear it down." "Why me?" "You were the only person who wanted it," Patricia said. "Everyone else who looked at it found reasons not to buy. Too old, too much work, too isolated. You were the only one who saw potential instead of problems." We talked for a few more minutes, but Patricia did not tell me anything else useful. When I hung up, I felt more alone than ever. That evening, I did something I had been avoiding. I pulled down the attic ladder. I had not been up there since moving in. The attic was the one part of the house I had not explored or cleaned. After hearing footsteps up there that first night, I had decided to leave it alone. But I needed to know what was up there. I needed to see it for myself. The ladder unfolded smoothly, its hinges barely creaking. I climbed up slowly, a flashlight in one hand. My head rose above the attic floor and I shone the light around. Boxes, lots of boxes, stacked neatly along the walls and in the center of the space. The attic was larger than I expected, running the full length of the house. The ceiling was low, maybe 5 feet at its highest point, exposed rafters and old insulation. I climbed up the rest of the way and stood hunched over, my head brushing the rafters. Dust covered everything. The boxes were labeled in the same neat handwriting as the rules. Christmas decorations, books, clothes, photos. I opened the box labeled photos. Inside were old albums and loose pictures, black and white photographs from decades ago. A young woman standing in front of the house smiling. The same woman, older now, in the garden. Holiday photos with people I did not recognize. Evelyn. These were pictures of Evelyn's life. I found one photo near the bottom of the box that made me stop. It showed Evelyn, probably in her 60s, standing in front of the house. But she was not smiling. She was looking at something to the left of the camera. And her expression was one of absolute terror. I turned the photo over. On the back, in that same careful handwriting, were 5 words. It was watching me again. I put the photo back and closed the box. My hands were shaking. Something had been watching Evelyn. For how long? Years? Decades? And she had stayed anyway. She had lived here, followed her rules, and survived. I looked around the attic again. The space was empty except for the boxes. No furniture, no place for anyone to hide. But I could feel something. A presence. Like I was being observed. I climbed down the ladder quickly and pushed it back up into the ceiling. The attic door clicked shut. I stood in the hallway, breathing hard, staring at that door. Rule number 2. Never go into the attic if you hear footsteps above you. I had gone up there during the day. I had not heard footsteps first. I had technically followed the rule. But I knew now that I should not go back up there. Whatever was in those boxes, whatever history this house held, I did not need to dig any deeper. That night, I followed all 5 rules perfectly. And the house stayed quiet. 3 more weeks passed. The routine became normal. Wake up at 6 a.m. when the hallway light could safely be turned off. Keep it on from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every night. Cover all mirrors before sunset. Stay away from the attic door. Do not follow any shadows. If I smelled smoke, leave immediately. The rules governed my life now. I planned everything around them. I did not have friends over because how would I explain the covered mirrors and the hallway light that never went off at night? I did not stay out past 10 p.m. because I needed to be home to make sure the light was on. I found freelance work editing content for websites. It paid enough to cover my bills and left me alone most of the time. Perfect for someone who could not maintain a normal schedule or social life. I told myself I was adapting, making it work, learning to live with the house and its rules. But I was lying to myself. The truth was I was becoming a prisoner. The house was controlling me, limiting my life, dictating my every action, and I was letting it happen because the alternative was worse. The alternative was what happened when you broke the rules. On a Tuesday night in my 7th week at the house, I broke another rule. I was in the living room watching television. An old movie I had seen before, something mindless to pass the time. It was 8:47 p.m., still well before 10, so the hallway light was off. The mirrors were already covered for the night. I got up during a commercial to get a drink from the kitchen. When I walked past the mirror in the downstairs hallway, I noticed the sheet had slipped, just a few inches. A small triangle of reflective glass was visible at the bottom corner. I should have fixed it right then. Pulled the sheet back down, made sure it was secure. But the sun had set an hour ago. Rule number 3 said to keep all mirrors covered after sunset. Was it too late to fix it? Would touching the mirror now count as uncovering it? I stood there staring at that small triangle of exposed glass, trying to decide what to do. The television played in the background. The house creaked softly around me. In the exposed triangle of mirror, I saw movement, not my reflection. Something else. A figure standing behind me in the hallway. Tall and thin and completely still. I spun around. Nothing there. The hallway was empty. I looked back at the mirror. The figure was still there, standing motionless, watching me. My heart hammered in my chest. I reached up and yanked the sheet down, covering the exposed glass completely. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the fabric. When the mirror was fully covered, I stepped back and took a deep breath. It was fine. I had fixed it. Everything was fine. I walked back to the living room on unsteady legs, sat down on the couch, tried to focus on the television. At 9:15 p.m., I heard footsteps on the porch, slow, heavy steps, back and forth across the wooden boards, the same pacing rhythm I had heard in the attic that first night. Back and forth, I muted the television and listened. The footsteps continued. They moved from one end of the porch to the other, turned, came back, over and over. Then they stopped at the front door. Silence. I stared at the door from my position on the couch, waiting. 3 knocks. Slow and deliberate knock, knock, knock. I did not move, did not answer. Rule number 4 said not to follow shadows that move on their own. It did not say anything about knocking, but I knew instinctively that answering that door would be a mistake. 3 more knocks. Louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. I sat frozen on the couch. The knocking continued. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more knocks. A rhythm that went on and on. Each set of knocks getting progressively louder and more aggressive. At 10:03 p.m., I realized I had forgotten to turn on the hallway light. I had been so focused on the knocking that I missed the time. It was after 10 p.m. and the hallway light was still off. I jumped up from the couch and ran to the stairs. I needed to get upstairs and turn on that light before something else happened. Halfway up the stairs, I heard the footsteps in the attic start again. I kept going, hit the top of the stairs and ran to the light switch. Flipped it up. The hallway light came on, bright and steady. The knocking at the front door stopped immediately. The footsteps in the attic stopped. The house fell silent. I stood in the hallway, gasping for breath, staring at the light fixture above me. 3 minutes late. I had been 3 minutes late turning on the hallway light, and the house had immediately responded. It knew. Whatever was here, it knew when I broke the rules. And it reacted. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my bedroom with my back against the door, watching the hallway light through the crack at the bottom, making sure it stayed on, making sure nothing else happened. At 6:02 a.m., I finally allowed myself to relax. I was exhausted, mentally and physically drained. I could not keep living like this. Constantly on edge, constantly afraid of making a mistake, constantly following rules I did not understand. But what choice did I have? I had spent all my savings buying this house. I had nowhere else to go. No job waiting for me in another city. No family to fall back on. This house was all I had, and it was killing me slowly. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Evelyn's note was still in the drawer next to me. I took it out and unfolded it once more. 5 simple rules. 5 impossible rules. 5 rules that I had to follow perfectly every single day or face consequences I could barely imagine. Evelyn had done this for 43 years. How had she survived? How had she maintained this constant vigilance for over 4 decades without losing her mind? Maybe she had not. Maybe that was why her family put her in a nursing home. Not because she was confused, but because she was exhausted, worn down by years of following rules and fighting against something that lived in her house. I thought about leaving. Just walking away from the house and never coming back. But where would I go? I had no money left. No backup plan. I was trapped here as surely as if I were locked in a cage. That afternoon, I drove to the library in town. It was a small building next to the post office, barely bigger than my living room. But they had computers with internet access and a local history section. I spent 3 hours researching the house on Birch Lane. The property records went back to 1924. The house had been built that year by a man named Theodore Blackwell. He had lived there for 6 years before selling it and moving away. No reason given for the sale. The next owner was a woman named Margaret Chen. She had owned the house for only 8 months before it was sold again. Then a family named the Richardsons for 2 years. Then another family for 15 months. The pattern was clear. No one stayed long. Most owners lasted less than 3 years. Some stayed only months, until Evelyn Marsh bought the house in 1979. She had lived there for 43 years, longer than all the previous owners combined. I searched for any news articles or records about the house. There was one article from 1952 about a fire that had been reported at the address. The fire department responded but found no fire. The article quoted the owner at the time saying they had smelled smoke and called 911, but no source was ever found. Rule number 5. Another article from 1968 mentioned a complaint to the police about someone trespassing on the property. The owner reported hearing footsteps in their attic and finding their front door scratched, but no evidence of a break-in was discovered. Rules number 2 and 1. The house had been doing this for a century. Different owners, different decades, same phenomena, and only Evelyn had figured out how to live with it. I printed out the articles and drove home as the sun was setting. I needed to cover the mirrors and turn on the hallway light soon. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw someone standing on my porch. A woman, elderly, with white hair and a long coat. She stood perfectly still, facing the front door. I parked the truck and got out slowly. The woman did not turn to look at me, did not move at all. "Excuse me," I called out. "Can I help you?" No response. I walked closer. "This is private property. You are trespassing." The woman finally turned to face me. Her eyes were completely white. No pupils, no irises, just blank white orbs that seemed to glow in the fading light. I stopped walking. Every hair on my body stood up. The woman smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of something pretending to be human and not doing a very good job of it. "You have been breaking the rules, Scott," she said. Her voice was wrong. Too many layers, like several people speaking at once in perfect unison. I could not move, could not speak. I just stood there staring at those white eyes. Evelyn followed the rules for 43 years, the woman continued. She never broke them, not once. That is why we let her live here in peace. What are you? I managed to whisper. We are what has always been here. Long before the house. Long before the town. We were here first, and we will be here after everything else is gone. The woman tilted her head at an unnatural angle. But we made an agreement with Evelyn. She could live here if she followed the rules. And now you live here. The same agreement applies to you. I am trying to follow the rules. Trying is not enough. You let the hallway light go dark. You looked at the covered mirror. You were late turning on the light. Each accusation was delivered in that layered voice that made my skin crawl. We have been patient with you because you are new. But our patience is not infinite. The sun was almost gone now, maybe 2 minutes until full dark. I needed to get inside and cover the mirrors and turn on the hallway light. I understand, I said. I will do better. I will follow the rules perfectly. The woman's smile widened impossibly far, stretching her face in ways that faces should not stretch. See that you do, because the next time you break a rule, we will not be so forgiving. She turned back to face the front door, and then she was simply gone. Not walking away, not fading, just gone as if she had never been there at all. I ran to the house, unlocked the door with shaking hands, checked every mirror to make sure they were covered, ran upstairs and turned on the hallway light exactly at 10 p.m. Then I sat on my bed and tried to stop trembling. They were watching me. Not just reacting when I broke the rules, but actively watching, keeping track of every mistake. And they had given me a warning. Next time would be different. Next time they would not just knock on doors or walk in attics or stand in basements. Next time they would do something worse. I had to be perfect. No more mistakes. No more lapses in judgment. The rules had to be followed exactly every single day without exception. You know what? Take a second and think about this. Could you do it? Could you follow 5 strict rules every single day, knowing that one mistake might cost you everything? Drop a comment and let me know. Because I want to know if I am alone in this or if other people understand what it is like to live in constant fear of making a single error. For 2 months I was perfect. Every rule followed exactly. Hallway light on at 10 p.m., off at 6 a.m., never a minute late. Mirrors covered before sunset every day. I checked them multiple times each evening to make sure the sheets had not slipped. I never went near the attic door. I avoided all shadows, kept my eyes down when walking through the house at night. And twice when I smelled smoke, I left through the back door immediately and did not return until morning. The house stayed quiet. No footsteps, no knocking, no figures appearing where they should not be. My reward for perfect obedience was peace. I fell into a routine that was almost comfortable. Work during the day, simple dinner in the evening, read or watch television until 10 p.m., then upstairs to bed with the hallway light burning. Wake at 6 a.m., turn off the light, repeat. It was a small life, a limited life, but it was safe. I started to think maybe I could do this long term. Maybe I could live here for years, just like Evelyn had. It would mean giving up on having friends or relationships or any kind of normal social life. But I would have a home, a place that was mine. The rationalization was pathetic, and I knew it. But what else could I do? Then on a cold night in November, everything changed. I was in bed reading when I heard a car pull into my driveway. The sound of tires on gravel and engine shutting off. Then a car door slamming. It was 11:34 p.m. I was not expecting anyone. I got out of bed and went to the window. A sedan was parked next to my truck. As I watched, a man got out and walked toward my front door. He was middle-aged, wearing a jacket and jeans, carrying what looked like a folder. 3 heavy knocks on the front door echoed through the house. I went downstairs slowly. Through the living room window, I could see the man standing on my porch. He looked normal, human, real, but I had learned not to trust appearances. I cracked the door open, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Can I help you?" The man smiled. It was a normal smile, nothing stretched or wrong about it. Scott Henderson. "I am sorry to bother you so late. My name is David Marsh. I am Evelyn's nephew." I relaxed slightly. "Oh. Hello. I know it is late, but I was driving through the area and I wanted to stop by. I have some things that belong to my aunt. Things I thought you should have since you are living in her house now." He held up the folder. May I come in? It will only take a few minutes. Every instinct told me not to open that door. It was after 10 p.m. The rules were in effect. Nothing good happened at night in this house, but he was Evelyn's nephew. Family, and he looked so normal, so harmless. Just for a minute, I said, undoing the chain lock. I opened the door, and David Marsh stepped inside. That was when I saw his eyes, completely white. No pupils, no irises, just those blank, glowing orbs. I tried to slam the door, but he moved impossibly fast. His hand shot out and caught the door, holding it open. His grip was like iron. "You opened the door, Scott," he said in that layered voice. "You let me in." That was very foolish. I stumbled backward into the living room. David, or whatever was pretending to be David, followed me inside, closing the door behind him. "There is no rule about not opening doors at night," I said, my voice shaking. I did not break any rules. "No," it agreed. "You followed the 5 rules perfectly. But there are other rules. Unwritten rules. Common sense rules. Like do not open your door to strangers at night. Do not invite things into your home." It moved toward me and I backed up until I hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. "Evelyn understood this," it continued. "She never answered the door after dark. Not once in 43 years. But you are not as smart as Evelyn. What do you want? We want you to understand something." It leaned closer. "This is our house. It has always been our house. We let humans live here because it amuses us to watch you try to follow the rules. But this is not your home. You are a guest here, and guests can be removed at any time." My phone was in my bedroom upstairs. Not that calling for help would do any good. Who would I call? The police? What would I tell them? "I will follow all the rules," I said. "Written and unwritten. Just tell me what they are." The thing wearing David Marsh's face smiled that too wide smile. "No, that is not how this works. Evelyn learned through experience, through mistakes and consequences. You will learn the same way." It reached out and touched my face with fingers that were too cold and too hard. "But we will give you one more chance. One more opportunity to prove you can live here. Do not waste it." Then it turned and walked to the front door, opened it, stepped out onto the porch, and disappeared into the darkness. I locked the door with shaking hands and checked every window on the first floor. All locked. I ran upstairs and checked those windows too. Then I sat on my bed and tried to calm my breathing. They had been testing me, and I had failed. I had followed the 5 written rules perfectly, but there were more rules. Unwritten ones. Things I was supposed to figure out on my own through trial and error. Things Evelyn had learned over 43 years of living here. How many more rules were there? How many more mistakes would I make before I learned them all? And how many chances did I have left before they decided I was not worth keeping around? I did not sleep that night. I sat in my room watching the hallway light burn and thought about Evelyn. She had survived for 43 years. She had learned all the rules, written and unwritten. She had figured out how to coexist with whatever lived in this house. And then she had left, moved to a nursing home, escaped. Had she left voluntarily, or had they forced her out? Had she finally made a mistake she could not recover from? I needed to know. I needed to understand what had happened to Evelyn and why she had left after so many years. The next morning, I called the nursing home where Evelyn had lived. The receptionist told me Evelyn had passed away 6 months ago, but they still had her room assignment on file. She had been in the memory care unit. Memory care? I asked. So she had dementia? I cannot discuss patient details, the receptionist said. But yes, she was in memory care for the last 3 months of her life. 3 months. Evelyn had only been in the nursing home for 3 months before she died. And she had been in memory care. Maybe her family had been right. Maybe she had been losing her memory at the end. Or maybe something else had happened. Maybe 43 years of following the rules had finally broken her. I spent that day reinforcing everything I knew about the rules. I wrote down the 5 written rules and put copies in every room. I added notes about the unwritten rules I had learned. Do not answer the door after dark. Do not look at exposed mirrors after sunset. Turn on the hallway light exactly at 10 p.m., not a minute late. I made lists and schedules and reminders. I set alarms on my phone for every important time. I became obsessive about checking and double-checking everything. I could not afford to make another mistake. That night I followed every rule perfectly. And the night after that, and every night for the next 3 weeks, the house stayed quiet. No visits from things with white eyes. No footsteps or knocking or shadows. just silence and routine. I was learning, adapting, becoming what Evelyn had been. On December 15th, I woke up at 5:47 a.m., still dark outside but close to sunrise. The hallway light was on, burning steadily. In 13 minutes, I could turn it off. I lay in bed, waiting, watching the minutes tick by on my phone. At 5:59 a.m., I heard crying, soft and distant, coming from somewhere below me. A woman's voice sobbing like her heart was breaking. The basement. Rule number 5. If you smell smoke but see no fire, leave through the back door immediately and do not return until daylight. But this was not smoke. This was crying. Different rule. Different situation, or was it? I got out of bed and stood at my door listening. The crying continued. Desperate and heartbroken, it tugged at something deep inside me, made me want to run downstairs and help. But I had learned not to trust my instincts in this house. The hallway light went off at exactly 6 a.m. I had a timer connected to it now, ensuring perfect timing. The hallway filled with gray pre-dawn light from the window at the far end. The crying got louder. I walked to the stairs and looked down. The sound was definitely coming from the basement. Through the kitchen, through that white door I had learned to fear. Someone was down there, someone who needed help. I walked down the stairs slowly. The crying got louder with each step. By the time I reached the kitchen, it was almost overwhelming. Raw pain and fear and desperation all mixed together in those sobs. I stood in front of the basement door. My hand touched the doorknob, then I stopped. This was a test. Just like opening the front door for David Marsh had been a test. They were seeing if I would make another mistake. Rule number 5 mentioned smoke, but the principle was the same. If something seemed wrong, if something was trying to lure me somewhere I should not go, I stepped back from the door. The crying got louder, more urgent, begging me to come down, to help, to save whoever was making that terrible sound. I walked to the back door instead, unlocked it, stepped outside into the cold December morning. The crying stopped immediately. I stood on the back porch in the pre-dawn darkness, my breath fogging in the cold air. Inside the house, everything was silent. I had passed the test. I waited outside for 30 minutes until the sun was fully up and I was shivering uncontrollably. Then I went back inside. The house was empty and quiet. I checked the basement. Nothing there. No sign that anyone had been crying or suffering. Just the furnace and the water heater and the concrete floor. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Another test passed. Another lesson learned. Do not investigate strange sounds, no matter how urgent they seem. Do not try to help. Just follow the rules and survive. That was what Evelyn had done. That was what I had to do. I was becoming her. Slowly but surely, I was turning into the same paranoid, rule-following person she had been, living a half-life in a house that controlled every aspect of my existence. And I had no way out. The holidays came and went. Christmas alone in a house where I could not even put up a mirror to see myself. New Year's Eve spent making sure the hallway light was on at exactly 10 p.m. I had lived in the house for 5 months now. 5 months of perfect rule following. 5 months of constant vigilance. 5 months of being tested and passing. I was surviving, but I was not living. In mid-January, I received an email from a woman named Rachel Marsh. She said she was Evelyn's niece and wanted to talk to me about the house. Could she visit? I read the email 3 times looking for any sign that it was not real. But it seemed legitimate. She included her phone number and a link to her social media profile. I checked it. She looked real, normal, human. I called her that afternoon. "Thank you for getting back to me," Rachel said. Her voice was warm and friendly. "I know this is strange, but I wanted to talk to you about my aunt and the house. Are you free this weekend? I could drive up on Saturday afternoon if that works for you." "Sure," I said. "But can I ask why you want to talk?" "My aunt left something for you," Rachel said. "Something she wanted the next owner to have. I have been holding on to it since she passed away, waiting for the right time to give it to you. I think that time is now." We agreed to meet on Saturday at 2 p.m. daylight hours. When the house was safest, Rachel arrived exactly on time. She was in her 40s with dark hair and a kind face. Her eyes were normal, brown and human and real. I let her in and we sat in the living room. She looked around at the covered mirrors and did not comment on them. "You are following the rules," she said. It was not a question. Yes, how did you know?
My aunt told me about them.
Not all of them, but enough. She knew what this house was. What it is. Rachel pulled an envelope from her purse. She left this for you. She made me promise I would give it to whoever bought the house. She said they would need it. I took the envelope. It was sealed, with my name written on the front in Evelyn's handwriting. Did you ever visit her here? I asked. In the house? Once when I was a child, Rachel said. I remember it being very dark. My aunt kept all the curtains closed and the lights on all the time. She had rules for visiting. Very specific rules. When I could come, where I could go, what I could touch. My parents thought she was eccentric. But I remember feeling like the house was watching me, like something was aware I was there. She shuddered. I never went back. Why did she stay so long? Rachel was quiet for a moment. I asked her that once near the end. She said because she had made a promise. That was all she would tell me. She had made a promise and she had to keep it. After Rachel left, I sat alone in the living room and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, several pages, handwritten in that same neat script. Dear Scott, if you are reading this, then you have survived at least a few months in the house. That means you are following the rules. Good, keep following them. Your life depends on it. I lived in this house for 43 years. It was not a happy life, but it was the life I chose. I want you to understand why I stayed and why I eventually had to leave. The house is old, older than it looks. The structure you see was built in 1924. But something has existed on this land for much longer. Something that was here before humans, before the town, before everything. I do not know what they are. I never saw them clearly. They can take many forms, appear as many things. But they are always watching, always waiting for you to make a mistake. The 5 rules I left you are the basic ones, the minimum you need to survive. But there are more, many more. I learned them over decades of trial and error. Some I learned the hard way through mistakes that I am lucky to have survived. Here are the additional rules I learned. Never answer the door after 10 p.m., no matter who is there or what they say. Do not go into the basement if you hear crying or voices. Do not acknowledge any figure you see standing in the yard at night. If objects in your house move on their own, leave them where they are. Do not speak to anything that calls your name with your own voice. Never sleep in the house on the anniversary of the day you moved in. There are others, but these are the most important. Learn them. Memorize them. Your survival depends on knowing these rules by heart. You must be wondering why I stayed, why I did not just leave and let someone else deal with the house. I made a promise to something in 1979, the night I moved in. I was young and foolish, and I did not understand what I was agreeing to. The things in the house said they would let me live there in peace if I followed their rules and never left. If I stayed, they would stay. If I left, they would leave too, and they would find someone else to bother. I did not want that. I did not want whatever lived in my house to go torment someone else somewhere else. So I stayed. For 43 years, I stayed and followed the rules and kept them contained to this one place. But I am old now, and I am tired. I broke a rule near the end and they gave me a choice. Leave voluntarily or they would make me leave. I chose to leave on my own terms. Now they are your problem. You bought the house and that means you inherited the agreement. They will stay here as long as you stay. If you leave, they will follow. They will find a new place and new people to torment. I know it is not fair. I know you did not ask for this, but this is the reality now. You have a choice to make, Scott. You can stay and follow the rules and keep them contained here, or you can leave and let them loose on the world. I do not envy you this choice, but I hope you make the right one. Evelyn Marsh. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. She had trapped me. Evelyn had trapped me as surely as if she had locked me in a cage. If I stayed, I would spend the rest of my life following rules and living in fear. If I left, I would unleash whatever lived in this house onto other people. Innocent people who did not know what they were inviting into their lives. It was not a choice. It was a prison sentence. I sat in the living room until the sun started to set. Then I got up and covered the mirrors and turned on the hallway light at exactly 10 p.m. Because what else could I do? That was 4 months ago. I am still here, still following the rules, still surviving day by day. I have added more rules to my list. Rules I learned through observation and small mistakes. Rules that keep me safe. Do not look directly at the attic door for more than a few seconds. Do not turn your back on the basement door when it is open. Do not eat food that appears in your kitchen that you do not remember buying. Do not follow the sound of music at night. The list grows longer every month. There are probably dozens more rules I have not discovered yet. Rules Evelyn knew but did not have time to write down. I am learning, adapting, becoming what she was. Sometimes I think about leaving anyway, letting whatever lives here escape and find new victims. Why should I sacrifice my life for strangers? But then I remember that I was a stranger once. I bought this house not knowing what waited inside. Someone has to keep it contained. Someone has to follow the rules. That someone is me now. I do not know how long I will last. Evelyn made it 43 years, but she was stronger than me, smarter, more disciplined. I give myself maybe 10 years before I break a rule I cannot recover from, before I make a mistake that costs me everything. But for now I am here, following the rules, surviving. The hallway light is on from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every night. The mirrors stay covered after sunset. I do not go into the attic when I hear footsteps. I do not follow shadows. I leave through the back door if I smell smoke with no fire, and I stay in the house. Because leaving would mean unleashing something terrible on the world. This is my life now. This is what I chose when I bought a house that seemed too good to be true. I should have known better. But it is too late now. The house owns me as much as I own it. We are bound together, following the same dance that Evelyn followed for 43 years. The rules keep me safe. The rules keep me sane. The rules keep me alive, and I will follow them until I cannot anymore. Because that is what you do when you live in a house like this. You follow the rules. You survive. You do your duty to keep the darkness contained, even if it costs you everything. So that is my story. That is how I ended up living in a house where following 5 simple rules means the difference between life and something worse than death. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Hit that like button if this story gave you chills. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. And share it with someone who needs to hear this warning. Some houses should never be bought. Some deals are too good to be true. And some rules exist for reasons you do not want to discover firsthand. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you would do in my situation. Would you stay? Would you leave? Would you follow the rules, or would you try to fight back?